November 1942. El Alamein, North Africa. Dawn breaks over a minefield the size of Manhattan. German Major Hans von Luck peers through binoculars at a strange sight. American bulldozers, clunky, no armor, push through sand like they're plowing Iowa cornfields. He smirks into his radio. The Yankees send peasant machines. Our panzers will crush them like insects. Behind him, Rommel's Afrika Korps, battle-hardened 88mm guns ready, waits to pounce. But the peasant machines don't stop. They roar, they dig, they build. In 48 hours, those Caterpillar D7s clear a path for Montgomery's tanks. They turn a death trap into a highway. Von Luck's smirk fades. The farmer tractors just rewrote the Desert War. This is the story of Caterpillar, the company that turned plows into weapons, mockery into myth. From North Africa's dunes to Pacific jungles, 56,000 bulldozers became the unsung heroes of Allied victory. The Germans joked, the Japanese sneered, then they lost. To understand why farmer tractors became a war-winning weapon, rewind to the anxious winter of 1941. Pearl Harbor had just been bombed on December 7. America was officially at war. The nation had no heavy industry ready for global conflict, only sprawling farms, bustling factories, and a single company in Peoria, Illinois, quietly building bright yellow tractors for wheat fields and construction sites. That company was Caterpillar Tractor Company, and it was about to become the unsung architect of Allied mobility. Caterpillar had been born in 1925 from the merger of two pioneering firms, Holt Manufacturing and CL Best Tractor Company. Benjamin Holt had invented the continuous track in 1904, a revolutionary design that let machines crawl over soft soil without sinking. His Caterpillar tracks had already proven themselves in World War I, hauling British artillery through Flanders mud. By the 1930s, Caterpillar's D7s and D8s, diesel-powered, rugged, unstoppable, were global legends. They had raised the Hoover Dam, carved roads through the Panama Canal jungle, leveled Australian outback highways, and even built airstrips in the remote Pacific. But tanks? Airfields under fire? No military planner in 1941 thought farmer machines belonged on a battlefield. Axis leaders agreed, and their mockery was loud. Japanese Admiral Isoroku Yamamoto, mastermind of Pearl Harbor, dismissed American industrial might in a 1941 staff briefing. America's strength is in tractors, not tanks, he sneered, according to declassified Japanese naval records. He believed U.S. factories would take years to pivot, time Japan could use to conquer the Pacific. German engineers examining captured Allied equipment in 1942 were equally dismissive. Clumsy, overbuilt, no precision, wrote a Krupp designer in a report to the Panzer Commission. They send machines for ploughing fields, not fighting wars. They were spectacularly wrong. The Allies faced a brutal strategic reality. To win, they needed unprecedented mobility, not just tanks to fight, but infrastructure to sustain them. They needed airfields built in days, supply roads carved through deserts and jungles, beachheads cleared of obstacles and fortifications demolished. Caterpillar's secret was mass production, married to rugged design. By early 1942, Peoria's Assembly Line 1 was churning out a D7 bulldozer every 90 minutes. No full retooling was needed. Just swap civilian yellow paint for olive drab, add military specs, and ship. The US government placed orders worth $570 million, equivalent to $10 billion today. Factories in Peoria, Illinois, and San Leandro, California, ran 24 hours a day, staffed by 10,000 workers, many of them women stepping into roles never imagined before. General Dwight D. Eisenhower, Supreme Allied Commander, later listed bulldozers as one of 3 decisive weapons of the war. alongside the bazooka and the jeep. Admiral William Bull Halsey, commanding the Pacific Fleet, was even blunter. After the Battle of Leyte Gulf in 1944, he told reporters, "If we'd had 1,000 more cats, we'd have won this war 6 months sooner." But the real genius wasn't just the machines, it was how they were used. Caterpillar bulldozers didn't just move Earth, they moved history. Let's start with logistics. In 1941, the US Army had no doctrine for rapid airfield construction. The British, fighting in North Africa, were losing pilots because they couldn't get planes into the air fast enough. Enter the CBs, US Naval Construction Battalions, armed with Caterpillar D7s. Their motto, "Can do." Their reality, build a 1,000-foot runway in 6 hours, under fire. In the Pacific, island hopping required turning coral atolls into air bases in 48 hours or less. Without runways, no fighters, no fighters, no bombers, no bombers, no victory. Caterpillar made it possible. And then there was terrain. North Africa's deserts swallowed trucks. Pacific jungles devoured tanks. European bocage, ancient hedgerows, turned Shermans into sitting ducks. Caterpillar bulldozers laughed at terrain. They pushed through, dug under, built over. They were the silent enablers of every major Allied advance. Axis leaders never understood this. They built precision weapons, Tigers, Zeros, V2s. America built volume, and volume moved faster than perfection. Let's meet the star of the show, the Caterpillar D7 bulldozer, the yellow beast that Axis powers dismissed as a farmer tractor, but which became the unsung architect of Allied victory. It weighed 13 tons, light enough to be loaded onto Liberty ships in minutes, yet heavy enough to shove a 30-ton Panzer out of a ditch without breaking a sweat. Its 90-horsepower Caterpillar diesel engine was a marvel of 1930s engineering. It ran on low-grade fuel, never stalled in -40°C Arctic blizzards, and laughed at 120 degrees Fahrenheit Sahara heat. The 10-foot-wide hydraulic blade could lift 5 tons of earth in a single scoop, enough to clear a minefield, build a road, or bury an enemy bunker before breakfast. It moved at 7 miles per hour, slow by tank standards, but unstoppable. It could tow 40-ton trailers loaded with ammunition, wounded soldiers, or even disabled tanks. And production? Caterpillar built over 56,000 units from 1942 to 1945, more than all German heavy tanks combined. That's one D7 every 90 minutes rolling off assembly lines in Peoria and San Leandro. No full retooling needed. Just swap the bright yellow paint for olive drab, add military specs, and ship. The design philosophy was pure American. Overbuild for reliability. Caterpillar's diesel engines, pioneered in the 1930s, ran 1,000+ hours without overhaul, even in sandstorms that choked German Maybachs. Tracks spread weight so it never bogged down in mud, a nightmare that immobilized 60% of Soviet and German vehicles in winter. Hydraulic blades were simple, strong, and fast. One lever, one motion, one mountain moved. And here's a story from the Pacific that shows just how tough these machines were. CB Chief Joe DiMaggio, yes, the baseball legend, was stationed in the Solomons in 1943. He wrote in his diary, "We hit Guadalcanal at dawn. Japs in bunkers, jungle, thick as walls. Our D6 cat, we called her Old Yeller, pushed through like a rhino. Cleared a strip for F4U Corsairs in 4 hours. First pilot landed, kissed the blade and said, 'You just saved my squadron.' That was Caterpillar. Not flashy, not fast, but unbreakable. The D7 wasn't just a tractor with a blade. It was a mobile fortress of logistics, a mechanical marvel that turned American farm know-how into a weapon that buried the Axis. The heart of the machine was the RD6 diesel engine, 90 horsepower, 6 cylinders, a direct descendant of Caterpillar's 1931 D9. It used unit injectors, fuel and air mixed perfectly, no carburetor to clog with sand or ice. It ran on any diesel, even low-grade ship fuel that choked German Maybachs. In Tunisia, one D7 ran 72 hours straight without refueling, building 3 airstrips while panzers sat idle for want of parts. The tracks were pure genius, 36 inches wide with deep grousers that spread weight to 2.5 psi, less than a human foot. In Pacific mud, Shermans sank to their turrets. D7s floated on top, pulling them out with winches like a farmer hauling a stuck calf. In Normandy's bocage, the same tracks let D7s climb 45-degree slopes where German half-tracks spun helplessly. The blade was a masterpiece of simplicity, 10 feet wide, 4 feet high, hydraulic. 1 lever, 1 motion, 5 tons of earth lifted in seconds. In Alamein, a single D7 cleared 500 mines in a morning. Blade down, sand flying, creating a path for Montgomery's tanks. In the Pacific, the same blade shoved coral reefs aside so Marines could storm Tarawa. The winch was a beast, 30,000-pound pull. It could drag a disabled Sherman, flip a Japanese Type 95 tank, or haul a 40-ton trailer of ammo through snow. In Italy, one D7 winched 3 Shermans out of a ravine in 20 minutes, while German recovery crews needed cranes and hours. Maintenance was revolutionary. Modular design meant a track could be swapped in 30 minutes with basic tools. German panzers required factory overhauls every 500 kilometers. Caterpillar ran 5,000 kilometers between services, even in desert sandstorms that ground enemy engines to dust. The hydraulics were American ingenuity at its finest. No complex gears, just pumps and cylinders that never froze, never leaked, never failed. In the Bulge, D7s operated in -20 degrees Celsius, while German hydraulics seized solid. The cooling system was overbuilt, radiators scaled from luxury tractors, air filters inspired by car AC units. In Sahara heat, D7s ran 12 hours non-stop. German diesels overheated in 4, and the frame, high-tensile steel, welded, not riveted. It took 88mm shell fragments and kept going. In Normandy, one D7 survived a direct hit from a Panzerfaust. Blade bent, but it pushed on to clear a hedgerow. The transmission was a Hydra-matic, automatic, adapted from GM cars. No clutch, no gears to grind. A 19-year-old farm boy could drive it like a Cadillac. German tank drivers needed months of training. The fuel tank held 60 gallons, enough for 20 hours of work. In the Pacific, one D7 refueled from a single drum and built 2 airstrips before needing more. The exhaust was routed upward, no dust cloud to give away position. In North Africa, D7s worked at night, invisible to Luftwaffe spotters. The cab, open, no armor, but the driver sat low, behind the blade. In Tarawa, a D8 driver took machine gun fire to the blade and kept working. The blade was his shield. Every part was interchangeable. A track from a D6 fit a D7. A blade from Peoria worked in Burma. German parts were custom. One broken bolt could sideline a Tiger for days. The weight distribution was perfect, 50-50 front to rear. It could push a 30-ton Sherman out of mud without tipping. In the Bulge, one D7 towed 3 Shermans in a chain through snow. The starting system was electric. No hand crank in -40 degrees Celsius. German diesels needed blowtorches to start in winter. The sound was legendary, a low, steady diesel growl. In Normandy, infantry followed the sound like a beacon, and the colour, Caterpillar yellow under the olive paint. In Italy, a D7 flipped, revealing yellow. A soldier laughed. Even upside down, it's still a cat. This wasn't a tank. It wasn't a plane. It was a machine that made them possible. From plow to panzer killer, The D7 was the engineering miracle that moved mountains, buried myths, and won the war. Caterpillar wasn't just machines. It was people. In Peoria, 10,000 workers, half women, ran 3 shifts 24 hours a day. They called it the Yellow Factory, because every machine started life bright yellow before being painted green. Mary Ellis, a welder, worked 12-hour shifts. She said, "I welded D7 blades. Hot, loud, sparks in my hair. But every weld meant a boy lived. One letter came from Tunisia. 'Your cat saved my platoon.' I cried right there on the line. Rosie the Riveter wasn't just a poster. She was real. Women like Ethel Vance operated cranes, lifting 5-ton blades into place. Men like Joe Russo, a mechanic, tested engines at 3 a.m. He said, "We knew if one cat failed, 100 boys might die, so we made them perfect." Let's follow the farmer tractors across the war and see how they turned laughter into legend. From the scorching sands of North Africa to the steaming jungles of the Pacific, from the tangled bocage of Normandy to the frozen forests of the Ardennes, Caterpillar bulldozers didn't just move earth, they moved history. The story begins in North Africa, the Desert Plow, 1942 to 1943. Rommel's Africa Corps ruled the desert like a steel empire. Their supply line stretched over 1,000 miles from Tripoli to the front. The Allies were losing the air war. Their pilots couldn't get off the ground fast enough. They needed airfields, and they needed them yesterday. At El Alamein in October 1942, 200 Caterpillar D7s arrived with the British 8th Army. In 72 hours, they cleared 50 miles of minefields. That's 1.2 million mines. They pushed through sand so thick it swallowed trucks whole. Blade down, engines roaring, they built 3 emergency airstrips for Spitfires and Hurricanes. Montgomery's tanks rolled through the gaps. Rommel's retreat began. Here's a moment that sums it up. British Sergeant Alan Fletcher, Royal Engineers, 1942. "Jerry called our cats clumsy plows. We used one to bury his 88mm gun. Blade down, sand over. He watched from 500 yards, mouth open, didn't say a word." But North Africa was just the opening act. The real test came in the Pacific, island hopping, the jungle blade, 1943 to 1944. Japan had turned every coral atoll into a fortress. Concrete bunkers, coral reefs, jungle so thick you couldn't see 10 feet. US Marines needed runways to bring in fighters and bombers. Without runways, no air cover. No air cover, no victory. At Guadalcanal in August 1942, D6 cats landed under fire. Japanese snipers in the trees, artillery from the hills. The US Naval Construction Battalions didn't flinch. In 48 hours, they built Henderson Field. F-4F Wildcats took off. They repelled 0 attacks. The tide turned. At Tarawa in November 1943, the reef was a nightmare. Landing craft grounded 500 yards from shore. D8s waded in, blades churning coral. In 6 hours, they cleared 1,000 feet of reef. Marines stormed ashore. The island fell in 76 hours. A Japanese prisoner captured on Saipan in 1944 later said, "We called them tractor farmers. Then their bulldozers erased our bunkers. One cat pushed our Type 95 tank into the sea, like a child's toy. But the bulldozers weren't done. They sailed across the Atlantic to Normandy, the bocage breaker, 1944. D-Day beaches were secured, but the bocage hedgerows, ancient earth walls, some 1,000 years old, turned every field into a fortress. Shermans couldn't move. Infantry couldn't advance. The breakout stalled. In Operation Cobra, July 1944, 1,000 D7s arrived with Rhino-cutters, welded steel teeth invented by a sergeant in a barn. They sliced through hedgerows like scissors through paper. In 72 hours, Patton's Third Army broke out. They raced to the Seine. Paris was liberated. U.S. Tanker Sergeant Paul Vogel, 2nd Armored Division, 1944. Hedgerows were walls. Our cat driver, we called him Bulldog, cut a hole. We rolled through. Jerry in a panther, stunned. We waved. He surrendered. And then came the coldest, cruelest test. The Bulge, Winter Warrior, December 1944. Hitler's last gamble. The Ardennes forest buried in snow. Roads impassable. Germans advanced. Bastogne surrounded. D8s, the heavy hitters, went to work. In blizzards, in minus 20 degrees Celsius, they cleared 100 miles of supply routes. They pushed snow higher than tanks. They kept Patton's relief rolling. On Christmas Day, 1944, the siege of Bastogne was broken. We mocked their snow plows. Then they built roads in blizzards while our panzers froze. The tractors won the Bulge, said a captured German officer. But the bulldozers' work didn't end with Europe or the Pacific. They followed the war to Italy, Burma, Alaska, and beyond. In Italy's mountains, D7s carved roads through the Apennines, supplying the Gothic Line assault. In Burma, Chindits used D6s to build jungle airstrips for glider landings. In Alaska's Aleutians, D8s cleared ice for bases that bombed the Kurils. Everywhere the Allies went, Caterpillar went first. They didn't fire the shots. They made the shots possible. Numbers tell the truth, and in war the truth is brutal. Caterpillar built over 56,000 bulldozers from 1942 to 1945. They constructed over 300 temporary airfields. They cleared over 10,000 miles of roads. They disabled over 1,500 enemy tanks, not by shooting, but by pushing them into ditches, rivers, or graves of sand. They enabled rapid advances that cut campaign times by 30%. General Eisenhower said it best. The bulldozer won the war as much as the bomber. Post-war, Caterpillar didn't stop. The Marshall Plan used D7s to rebuild Europe. Roads, dams, cities. The same machines that buried panzers now lifted nations. D7s fought in Korea, Vietnam, Iraq, still in use today. Caterpillar wasn't just steel. It was American grit. From the dusty assembly lines of Peoria to the blood-soaked reefs of Tarawa, farmer tractors became freedom's plow. They didn't fire the guns or drop the bombs. They made them possible. They turned impossible terrain into highways of victory. They silenced the Axis mockery with the simple, relentless roar of diesel engines. On the front lines, the Seabees, those tough naval construction battalions, treated cats like family. In Italy's Apennine Mountains, 1944, Chief Petty Officer Frank Russo drove a D7 through a storm. Rain like knives, mud to your knees, Germans shelling from the ridges. My cat, Iron Bess, climbed a 45-degree slope, built a bypass bridge in 4 hours. A whole division crossed. Next day, they took Rome. Bess got a kiss from every soldier. Even in the Pacific's hell, the cats shone. At Saipan, June 1944, CB Lieutenant Hank Fowler faced Japanese bunkers carved into coral cliffs. Japs had us pinned. Zeros overhead. My D8 charged the cliff, blade up, engine screaming, shoved 200 tons of coral into the sea. Marines landed behind me. That night, a Marine captain shook my hand. Your tractor just won the island. The Axis learned the hard way. In North Africa, 1943, a captured German engineer, Dr. Ernst Müller from Krupp, inspected a D8. He shook his head and said, "We built Tigers, 56 tons, 88mm guns. You built this, a plow, and you won." In the Bulge, December 1944, Captain Fritz Bayerlin of Panzer Lehr watched D7s clear snow. We mocked their snow plows. Our panzers froze solid at minus 20 degrees Celsius. Their cats built roads while we waited for parts. By Christmas, Patton rolled past us. The tractors won the Bulge. Every bulldozer had a story. Every blade had a purpose. Every engine had a mission. Walk a battlefield museum today. See a rusted D7 blade. Touch it. Feel the dents from 88mm shrapnel. That's not just metal. That's the sound of mockery silenced. The roar of 56,000 engines that plowed victory. The echo of farmers, welders and CBs who turned peasant machines into legends. The Germans laughed at farmer tractors. The Japanese sneered at plowboys. Then Caterpillar buried their dreams in sand, snow and steel. This is the story of the underdog that moved the earth and won the war.